Kamakura and living along the coast in Japan. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is Seeking Sustainability Live number 188. And today we're talking about one of my favorite places in Japan, not too far from Tokyo, about an hour away in Kamakura with Helen. Thank you so much for joining, Helen.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how long have you lived in the Kamakura area?
Gosh, it's been about 6.5 years, I guess, maybe almost 7 years we've been here.
Wow. And have you been running the Kamakura by the Sea Villa the whole time?
Pretty much. Yeah, I think when we moved, we took about 6 months to kind of, get our bearings and fix a few things up. But after that, yeah, it's been 5.5, 6 years, I guess.
Wow. It's a gorgeous area you're living in. I'll show your photos on Twitter. Of your sea views, and Mount Fuji beyond are always very popular. That location is just fabulous. People must love coming to stay there.
Yeah, we get pretty good reviews on our location when people are looking for proximity to the beach and the daibutsu and whatnot. You have to do a little bit of a walk to see Mount Fuji, but it's not too far. But yeah, it's a great spot.
Yeah, and also you're raising 2 kids, and your husband is an avid surfer. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Not a good surfer, just an avid surfer.
It's all about loving the waves, right?
Right.
Yeah. So tell us how you decided on that house or starting running the Airbnb. Is it Airbnb or B&B?
We're kind of like an inn. We had a few different changes over the years, but I think inn is probably the best way to describe us. But sure. Let's see. Initially, we had no intention of running an inn. The idea was to have a cafe. So my husband used to have a cafe at Kichijoji Station, the JR building there, like years and years ago. So he thought that's something that he would like to do. The market, though, in Kamakura moves pretty quickly when it comes to buildings that are in good spots to run a business. So we had a few big disappointments where we'd call and be like, we want the place. And say, oh, we sold it yesterday. And we were kind of starting to feel down about things. This house that we're in now, that listing was not moving at all. So my husband eventually said, well, why don't we just run an inn? And that's what happened. So there wasn't really much planning in advance. If I did it again, we would plan a little bit more. But the location was the best location that we'd found so far. Fabulous neighborhood, close to the station, close to the sea. So really couldn't complain. And then it was just kind of baptism by fire as we tried to figure out how to run an inn and how to get licensed. So we've got a Kanishkusho license. So it's like a business hotel license. It's just kind of getting that and the process, and it takes time. And we were close to a hoikuen, so it makes it even more difficult. You have to get permission from the hoikuen as well. So it was quite a process, but eventually we got it all set up and we got started. And at first, yeah, we did bed and breakfast. And then we realized some people don't want breakfast. So we switched to, okay, let's think of ourselves in an inn. You've got both options. But then people were arriving thinking they were getting breakfast and surprised to discover that they hadn't ordered breakfast. So we switched back. And then after this pandemic started, we stopped serving breakfast because our dining room, we can't ventilate it very well. So we just cut that right out. So I'm not sure if we'll go back or not. But yeah.
How has it been during coronavirus? Have you been able to continue as accommodation at all?
For the state of emergency in the spring and now during the state of emergency, we have closed up. In between, we did open for the summer holidays. And during Obon, we had like a lot of guests who were living in Japan. There been much. We have shared washrooms. So, and we also did not do go-to travel. So, when you're looking at the listings and you're like, oh, this place is doing go-to travel, we can stay there really cheap. this place is the same price because they're not doing go-to travel and they have shared bathrooms. So we're not exactly high on the list at the moment. But, you know, with 2 kids and my husband has high blood pressure, and, you know, you do what you have to do. So
Yeah, it's running a B&B has been something for many years. I love visiting B&Bs in beautiful locations. It's always something that I keep in the back of my mind as like, oh, maybe I'll go buy a house in a beautiful location, run a B&B. It's kind of, I have a romantic view. And so I want to know how hard it is. Like, how much do you have to balance running the business with raising your kids, having your own free time?
that is difficult. Once we started and we started actually looking into it, I came across like an association in the United States for innkeepers, and they said the average amount of time that somebody runs a B&B is 7 years. One of the reasons is because generally it's people who have retired and they think, oh, this would be lots of fun. But the other reason is because it is exhausting. It's not, every job's exhausting, but when you have people in your house, especially when you're living on site, there's another level of anxiety going on. There's another level. There's somebody in the house. You can't fully relax. You might only be open, check-in might be from 3:30 until, and then, check out at 10 o'clock the next morning. But people come early, people stay late, people stay multiple days, and then you're always on. You never know when a question is coming. So you just want to kind of lie down on the couch, but just as soon as you lie down, someone opens the door and they find you lolled out on the. So you always have to be aware of that. It can be a lot of fun. It's wonderful. You meet people from all over the world, and connections, points of view that you would never come across otherwise, but it is exhausting. So if you would do it, my advice to you would be, and I read this after we already moved in, make sure that you have your own quarters that are very separate from the rest of the inn, and maintain it. Don't, be loosey-goosey and let people come in and out as much as you want. You've got to maintain that. Otherwise, you're constantly available, and it's exhausting. So, there's pluses and minuses, but that would be the big minus. It's just, you're always on.
I would imagine that would be really hard, especially raising kids and just having that separation between work time and private time, workspace and private space. You must always think about that when you're thinking about the price point and thinking, I don't want to make it that cheap because this is like taking up a part of my life, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up. When we started, we were very aware of, we're a family and we travel and it's expensive. So we really wanted to make ourselves as family friendly as possible. We're like, let's start with prices low. And after about a year or two, we realized it's not something that we could continue because, just the time and just everything, the exhaustion level and the constant nature of the work. No matter how good your guests are, no matter how much you want to make yourself available, you can't do it at a really low price. You really have to take that into consideration. So we did raise our prices, which meant, unfortunately, we got fewer families, which was too bad for the kids because our older kid, she made so many friends the first year or two that we did this. But it's too hard. Like, it really is hard on you, and you're constantly thinking, I got to do this right now, and it's supper time, and my kid wants me, but I have to, leave her there. And our neighbor, actually, he's the fellow we bought this inn from. He used to do an inn at his house and here, and his parents did it, and his grandparents did it. And he said, one time I interviewed him for an article I wrote for the Canadian, the magazine for the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and I asked him about that, and he said he hated being a kid whose parents ran an inn because they weren't his parents. Every time he sat down to dinner, his parents would disappear. And as soon as I heard that, just my heart sank. I'm like, that's what I'm doing to my kids. And I know my 9-year-old, she's able to say now, I don't like it. Why aren't you paying attention to me? I need your help. And it's like, well, the guests need our help. She's like, well, why am I not the most important, And it's hard to tell your kids that, usually when you're at home, their importance level goes up, but our home is our work. So they're always kind of like drop down a few notches. So your heart breaks as you're doing it. It doesn't matter how much fun you're having.
I could imagine that would always be kind of a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like you have some of the rooms, people do their own bedding, kind of Japanese style.
Yeah.
And then the other one, you would have to change the bedding every day. Of course, even changing. But has that helped you with workload a little bit? Like a typical ryokan in Japan, when you go to dinner, you would come back to your room and everything would magically, all your beds would be arranged. I would imagine that is pretty hard to do when you're running your B&B. So having it inside the closet ready for the customer, that seems like a nice hack, if you will.
It is much easier. And it's also, I wonder like how it would even be possible to do it the other way, because we don't serve dinner. So, you know, when you're at a ryokan, you go to the dinner, they know what time you're eating, they can kind of schedule it. But for us, you never know when the guests are leaving to go eat. Some of them just go to the convenience store and bring the food back. So you'd be kind of like waiting outside the door being like, hi, you guys gonna go soon? And then, oh gosh, you're back. I'm still making your bed. So yeah, but otherwise, yeah, it just saves so much time. So there's at least that. Some guests don't get it. Guests who aren't used to Japan are kind of like, I don't know how to make a futon, and I'm happy to help, you know, when they're confused about it, or when they just can't quite get it, or they're really tired. But for the most part, they do it themselves, and it's so much easier.
That's good. That's good. For me, I love it when it's that style, because as I get older, I'm much more of like a princess in a pea type of sleeper. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. I usually need like 3 futons before I feel happy. So if it's there for me to use, I'm really happy.
We get that. I tell them, you know, these are the futons that we have set out. There's more in the cupboard, so feel free to take as many as you want. And we'll go in the next day. There'll be like 5 stacked up.
Oh, that's awesome. And you just have to change the one sheet. It doesn't have to be all the futons that you wash, right?
Yeah, the sheets, actually, we send them out. So we don't even have to take care of that. A different company does that, and they just like deliver them. So that's super easy. And then, yeah, everything else just kind of gets aired out, because it's so nice to be able to just pull that top futon cover off. And just...
That's one of the things I wonder, like how much work you would have to do extra on top of already having your family washing to do all the sheet washing every day.
Yeah.
Do you find that most people stay for more than a night?
Not to Kamakura, and we've capped our stays at 2 nights, because otherwise we find it's just too hard, especially on the kids, to constantly have, you know, we try to open up a day or something. But when most people come to Kamakura, they're thinking 1 night, maybe 2. We've had a few times where people have asked, you know, we'd like to stay for 5 nights, and we've been like, okay, just so you know, you might run out of stuff to do. But yeah, most people, they're coming on their way to Hakone. So they're just, you know, from Tokyo, 1 night in Kamakura, and then right off to Hakone or Kyoto or whatever. So generally speaking, they're not interested.
Really interesting. Like in terms of sustainability consulting, I'm always telling hotels, try to incentivize staying longer. Because in theory, it should be less work and it should be less use of resources. For example, if people don't need new sheets, new towels every day, and they're staying 3 nights, it should take off the amount of work for you. But it's interesting to hear.
It does. When we have people stay for 2 nights, it's kind of nice. The next day we go, oh, we don't have to change the sheets. We just have to do like light cleaning. So it does get rid of that job. And there are a few other things you don't have to worry about too much. But I think it's just because it's such small quarters. If we did have a larger space, it would be different. But we notice after a few days, even our guests, because they're sharing like we assign each room to their own washroom, but they're not in the same room. So they are going down the hall, and it's right next to the other group's washroom, and they've got to go downstairs to use the bathroom. By about 3 or 4 days, you can kind of tell they're getting a bit antsy as well. So as much time as they spend outside, once they come back, it's like, oh, okay, it's kind of small in here. So for them, as well as for us, it's just, you run out of things to talk about too. So.
Yeah. Wow. So you really are like engaging with the guests quite a lot. It's not like they're just staying and you don't really see them once they're in. It's really like part of your household.
Yeah.
That is a bit
Yes.
tiring. We have a good comment from Yukio Matsuzaki. Thank you for joining from YouTube. Hello, we hear you about the hard work. We used to run a lodge in Vermont. My husband grew up there. He says it was hard at Christmas, but he loved having friends around all the time.
Yes. Definitely our older daughter, she's the one who got to experience that. And every day, in the summer in particular, there would be a new friend to play with. And we had some families come back for a second year, and it was super exciting to see the kids have grown a year, and now they're playing different games together. And even kids who don't speak Japanese or English, we've had families from, China or Hong Kong, and they don't need a language in common. They just have this fabulous time playing together, and it was fabulous I loved watching that. So it was a really special experience. Now that she's older, she doesn't enjoy it as much, but yeah, sometimes in the summer when we'd have a lot of kids, the house would just be absolute chaos. There'd be origami paper all over the place and sand all over the place, but everyone's having a good time. So
that's so interesting. Is there a different license if you're living in the house and renting it out than if it's a standalone hotel? I'm sure there's different rules, right?
There are some rules about it. Mostly about the kitchen. You have to be really careful about the kitchen because we do serve food. So we're not really supposed to be using the kitchen for our own use. So we kind of have like a hot plate and like a kettle and microwave and that sort of thing. For a while there, we were eating a lot of bento. But when we were really busy, I was just like, okay, it's bento again. So now my kids don't like bento from the shop. But otherwise, I don't really think there is anything if you're on site. The Minpaku license might be different. I'm not sure about that, but with ours, it's just the kitchen that we really have to be careful about.
Right. Wendy is joining from Facebook. Thanks, Wendy. She says, great to hear about your experience, especially as we are looking to run our own Airbnb type pension. Wonderful. Mm-hmm.
It's great. Good luck. It's fun. Don't worry about the bad things about it. It really is a lot of fun.
Oh, good. So you did mention the owner was living next door. I wonder if he was running it just as a standalone kind of accommodation, and then his lodgings was next door?
Yeah, that's right. So we get a lot of guests who get confused when they arrive. They go to his house instead of our house, and his guests come to our house instead of his house because they look very similar. He lived over there. He built that house as a house and like a hotel, basically. So he still has 2 rooms, but it's quite separate from where he and his mother live. So he built this side as an inn, a bed and breakfast for women. So the whole thing was meant to be used just as a bed and breakfast. And so from his kitchen to our kitchen, they're very close. And he used to have like a little deck connecting them, so he could run between houses really easily. But I'm pretty sure he built it like that because he knew eventually he'd want to retire and he'd want to keep his house, but he'd want to get rid of most of the rooms. So that's kind of what he did. We severed the property. But yeah, he's still there and he still does the 2 rooms.
Is that something you think about, moving your family out nearby to your own place and just running that as a hotel?
We have thought about that a little bit. Part of it, I mean, cost-wise, it would be difficult. We're only renting out 2 rooms right now, so we don't actually make very much money doing this. We have other income streams. But Kamakura is just very expensive to live in. So anything nearby that would, it would be hard to do both. And even though we would hopefully be making more money by having more rooms available, I think it would make it almost like breaking even, maybe. And the kids, they like this house. I think they'd be pretty upset. We said, hey, guess what? We're moving down the street to that little apartment.
Yeah, well, if you've got other streams of income and it's just part of your income streams, it seems to make sense. But in terms of keeping your private work life, free time kind of separate, it seems like, something you might want to think about. That's hard as your girls get older, too.
Exactly. That's the other big thing. As we get older, what are they going to do? Because they're going to want more privacy. I was this close to renting an apartment, I guess, in 2019, in I guess the fall. I was really thinking about it. My writing work had kind of picked up, and I was like, I can afford the monthly rent for the most part, and the Olympics were coming up and we're going to be really busy, and it'll just be nice to get out of the house. Now I'm so glad we didn't, because the pandemic, and it would have been like, oh no, I've got to pay for an apartment now. So in the end, but it was something that I was really, really considering, because it was just, our older daughter was having a lot of trouble with it for a few months there. Yeah. So in the future, I might just have to pick up more writing work and do it so that she can have like a little out.
Yeah. Well, you're a great writer on your blog and other articles in other areas. One article I thought, which is connected to choosing that house, you wrote a blog about choosing your natural disaster.
Yes.
Tell us your ideas a little bit.
Sure. So basically, no matter where you live in Japan, something is going to kill you. And I kind of feel like there are a lot of places in the world where that's true. Where I grew up, we've got tornadoes. They're not big tornadoes, but still, no matter where you are, something's going to kill you. But especially in Japan, it seems to take it to another level. So my husband is terrified of landslides. When he was a kid, I guess he saw it on the news enough, and he remembers, a big flood on the Tama River and like houses floating down the river. So for him, living anywhere near a hill is like not going to happen. He loves the ocean. It doesn't scare him. I'm afraid of the ocean. I'm afraid of tsunami. But somehow his fear of landslide won out over my fear of tsunami. But so yeah, those are the two big ones, I guess. And when it comes down to it, I guess which is more likely to happen and which gives you more warning. And my husband says, if it's a tsunami, you're going to get the warning. You're going to have about 5 minutes to like run up a hill. If it's a landslide, you have no idea. It's just raining hard and suddenly you're under mud. So I kind of thought, well, that's a good point. Okay. Yep. Mhm. Yeah, I never thought of it that way before. I was just like, no, the sea's gonna kill me. And he's like, well, maybe not. And I was like, okay, well, maybe is better than definitely. So for sure. But sorry. Mhm. Mhm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it runs from Kamakura to Fujisawa, so it's about 30 minutes start to finish. And yeah, it's a super cute train. It's comes in a few different colors, although the standard is green. And every once in a while, you get one of the train cars that still has wood flooring. So that's a lot of fun when you walk on. You're like, oh, great, we're on a classic train car. But yeah, it's fabulous scenery for almost the entire go. And it's just a few minutes between stations. It makes going around the city fairly easy. So yeah, it's super cute, really popular with photographers. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They've got a what they do. They have a little mascot. I've only seen him a few times, but he's like this cute little train, and he looks like a couch or something. He's just like this big blob, basically. But kids love him, of course, and at festivals and train events and all sorts of stuff. Sorry, there's a little bit of noise in the background. My husband just came in. Yes. Mhm. Yes, the Goshuin show. Those are a lot of fun. I started that a little bit before the boom. Suddenly it got really and I had like randomly started doing it. I think the first one I got was at Sugimoto-dera in Kamakura. So it's the oldest temple in town, and it's the start of the Kamakura 33 Kanen pilgrimage. And it's also on a few other pilgrimages. I think it's on the big Kanto area Kanen pilgrimage as well. Fabulous little place. So yeah, I started to do it from there, and I've done the 7 Gods of Luck pilgrimage and collected all the seals and just random. They're just beautiful. So near us, we've got Goryo Jinja, which is also on the 7 Gods of Luck, and there's Hasei Temple, also 7 Gods of Luck. And then there's Jojuin. I mean, temples and shrines all over the place, as you said. So there's lots of places to get shrines, seals. So if you come to Kamakura, bring your book, definitely.
Buy the books at the temples, or where can you buy the books?
Yeah, you can definitely go with the temple. Apparently some stationery stores sell them, but I've read that not all temples accept books that are not obviously from a temple. So yeah, you can buy them at most temples and shrines that like have a shrine office or a temple office that's open regularly. So some of them, like Amano Jinja, for example, it's not manned, so you won't be able to get anything there. But if you go to Hasei Temple, for example, they've got a whole bunch of different books. Some of them are very like Hasei Temple, like they'll have hydrangeas on them. Hasei Temple is known for its hydrangeas in the spring. Or if you got, I think at the Daibutsu at Kotokuin, you can get one with like the Daibutsu on it maybe. But a lot of them will have their own book that's branded, if you will, and then they have just general books. It doesn't matter if you take your book from Hasei Temple and take it to a different temple or shrine. They don't care. But as long as it's like a special one. And some of them open like an accordion, and then some of them open like a book. So there's a few different styles to look at in different sizes as well. So, and different price ranges. Some of them are very expensive.
Yeah, they're absolutely beautiful. And it's another great way to support the temple or local shops because, of course, they're all handmade, gorgeous books.
Yeah,
right?
So usually 300 is the standard, but some places are 500. I think there are a few 500 yen places in town. And then in other towns, I've heard that, 1,000 yen or more, they're just like works of art with like drawings in the background. So you never know what you're going to get, basically.
Yeah. And then when you gave some advice that when you go and give your book to get it signed, you can ask if you can take photos or video and then document them beautifully, so beautifully writing as well.
Yeah, I'd say definitely do your best to kind of like read the room before you ask, because I've gone to a few where I was like, I don't think they're going to say yes here, and I just did not ask. And others where they're a little bit friendlier, they're also not as busy. And I've been like, I won't get your face, it's just your hands. Because a lot of them, when I first said, can I take a video? She was like, and I was like, just your hands, just your hands. She's like, oh, okay then. So you kind of, you have to be careful about it. And you might be told no. So just prepare yourself for that. But I think they'd probably be much happier about it if you just got their hands.
Yeah. Well,
and sometimes they get into the back though, so you won't even have a chance.
Yeah, it's the polite thing to do if you have a chance. Always ask.
Yes.
And if
sure.
they say no, just say okay and don't do it. You have some great is it Hokokuji temple with all the bamboo? Can you tell us about that temple?
Sure. It is out by Sugimoto-dera and Jomyoji. So if you're going to go to Hokokuji Temple, do all 3. They're fabulous. Hokokuji, it is, you can enter the first part of the temple without paying a fee. And the first part of the temple, there's no bamboo, but it's beautiful, especially in the fall. It's stunning. So even if you're like, I don't really want to pay, at least go and see the first half of the temple area. It is very popular at the moment. Right now, of course, it's pandemic, so not so much. But before that, I went one day and there was a 20-minute line up just to get into the temple. So if after the pandemic ends, you're there on a summer day, don't be surprised if you've got to wait. You have to pay to see the bamboo. So it's a few hundred yen to see the bamboo. And it's this incredible forest of bamboo, this grove, I suppose, of bamboo. And you walk through, and partway through, there's like a little tea house. It's not a traditional tea house. You're not sitting on tatami. I guess they built it for the number of people who come. So it's like bench seating. You can kind of like sit there, and there's a great big open window, like no glass, and you're looking out onto the bamboo, and the stone kind of like a part of the mountainside, and there's yagura dug into the mountainside. So yagura are like a kamakura thing. The rock here is quite soft, so they used to dig into it, and sometimes they're used as graves, and sometimes they're used for other things I'm not 100% sure on. But wherever you go in Kamakura, you're going to see like these things dug out of the stone. So at Hokokuji, you enjoy your matcha and your little treat while, observing or like enjoying this view of bamboo and yagura. And they also have a raked garden. I don't think you can see it from the tea place, but as you get to the end of the bamboo path, there's like this beautiful raked garden that you can look at too. So it's very popular with Europeans.
Yeah, I've been to Kamakura many times. I don't think I've been there. I'll have to seek it out.
He said, my husband's just held something up and he's saying, "Eishoji, say Eishoji." So a lot of people, they want to see bamboo, but they don't want to go to Hokokuji because it's so crowded and because it is far from the station. You've either got to hop on a bus or you've got to walk about 25 minutes. So people who don't want to do that should go to Eishoji, which is a nunnery, which is very unique in the area. There aren't any left. It's just that one. It's very close to the Kamakura station, but it's not very well known, I guess. And it's kind of hard to enter because it's walled. So you're kind of like, are you allowed to go in? But definitely go in. And it has a smaller bamboo grove. And it's beautiful. And otherwise it's a fabulous temple. They're very nice. So if you want to see bamboo, but you don't want the lions, go to Eishoji. So
okay, well, that's
my husband.
Yeah, that's a good hint. And I found the picture of the caves from your video. You can see the caves. This is what you can see from the tea house in Hokoku. And the ladies in the tea house giving you the matcha tea. Looks really nice. Beautiful place.
Sorry.
No.
I'm in silence.
That's okay. That's okay. Another place that looked really interesting was with all the foxes in Sasuke Inari?
Sasuke Inari, yeah. That's my absolute favorite in town. Again, it's an Inari shrine, so it's got all of the red gates. So a lot of people who come to stay with us, they're also going to Kyoto, and they're like, oh, I gotta go see Fushimi Inari. It's gonna be amazing, but it's also so crowded. So I tell them, go to Sasuke Inari. It's not crowded, and it's smaller, but it's not crowded, and you can just kind of relax as you go up. And it's got this really earthy feel, like it's built into the mountain. It's just a hill, but and huge trees and all these teeny tiny little foxes everywhere. So Inari is what is it? His messenger is the fox or something. I'm always getting it wrong, but Inari is associated with the fox. So anytime you're at an Inari shrine, you're going to see the little foxes everywhere. So like trinkets, statues, and moss and old stone. It's a fabulous one to visit.
And then I'm looking at your Instagram and I got distracted by your young ginger and miso.
Oh, it's so good. It tastes so good.
I have never tried that. That looks amazing.
It is. And we know some farmers in town, and my husband, I don't even remember. Oh yeah, that's right. They go digging for bamboo shoots together in the spring. And then that's, I guess, how they got to know each other. And then, if he has extra ginger, he'll give us like all these ginger roots and just like this. And then at one of the local festivals, they also sell them for a few hundred yen, and you just come home with a massive stack and you just sit there with the miso. So good. So spicy, but so good.
So it's just straight miso, like out of the miso maker's box or whatever. And then the young ginger looks really beautiful. I haven't seen that sold. I'll have to look for it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely keep an eye out. You might have to do farmers markets, but definitely.
Ginger and miso is a nice find.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing you introduced, which I thought was really interesting and maybe possible even now during coronavirus, there's an outdoor tea house you introduced, like a Western style tea house.
Oh yes, at Jojuin. No, not Jojuin, sorry, Jomyoji. I'm getting my temples mixed up. At Jomyoji, yes. It's so bizarre. So Jomyoji is out by Hokokuji and Sugimoto-dera. And it's really unassuming. You go in, there's just this like little gate you go through, and kind of like one big temple building, and kind of like, is that it? And then you kind of follow the path. And first you come to a Japanese style tea house, which you also sit at like a little table, but it's got this beautiful garden that you can look at. And then you continue along the path further and you go up some stairs, and suddenly there's this like big Western house. And you're kind of like, why is there a Western house here? It's one of those ones built in like, I guess the earlier 1900s. And it is an English tea place. Don't expect to see that at all, but it's wonderful. They have indoor seating. They also have the outdoor seating on the deck. Beautiful gardens. They're known for the rose garden in particular, but I guess it's seasonal. So, and yeah, you can get like scones there and tea, and you can have like light lunches. And I think they might even have more substantial meals as well. Really, really big surprise when we first came upon that, but it's an interesting addition to, I guess, Kamakura.
Another thing I've never even heard of. So that's nice to see the outdoor seating areas as well.
Mm-hmm. It's fabulous on the patio.
Should be good for when you have kids, but also good when you're socially distancing, right?
For sure, sure.
Has everything pretty much stayed open in Kamakura, or has a lot closed during the state of emergency?
A few shops have closed. There are a few shops you'll walk by and they'll have a sign saying we're closed until the end of the state of emergency. There have also been a number of places that have just gone out of business, which has been really sad to see. But for the most part, people are open. They have no choice. You know, it's their main source of income, so that's just kind of what they do. But yeah, events have been closed or been canceled. So the usual stuff in certain areas you can't go into, you used to be able to go into, but now you can't, sort of thing. So there's a few changes, but for the most part, it's like an outdoor city. You know, you're outdoor almost all the time. So it's not been too bad.
That's good. That's one of the things that I really love about Kamakura is so much great walking to do everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
You recommended a book about Kamakura Fact and Legend. Yeah, can you tell us about that?
Sure. So Kamakura Fact and Legend, it's out of print, but you can still get old copies, and they also have it on Kindle. It's an incredible book. It's written by a woman named Mutsu Iso. Her real name, or her birth name, is Gertrude Ethel Passingham. I've got my notes beside me. She's a British woman who married a Japanese diplomat and nobleman, and they moved to Japan in 1910. And so she lived here until she died in 1930. And she got to know a lot of the priests and like the monks at the temples and shrines around town. And she wrote this incredible book on the city. If you're looking for something up to date on Kamakura, this is not for you. But if you really want to get to know Kamakura and get like a feel for its history and hear like those little legends, and it's a must read if you love Kamakura. She is an incredible writer. Just the prose is incredible. This is a newer edition, so it's also got photos inside it. But I mean, the connection she had with the priests and monks, she gets stories that, you know, I couldn't walk up to a priest and be like, so tell me, you know, did this temple ever fall into disrepair? But she knows those stories. She knows about the treasures being burned. She knows about, you know, and the way she puts it into the story, it's very interesting, even though it's a long read, but incredible book if you love Kamakura. Sugimoto Dera. Yes, and it is the oldest temple that still exists in Kamakura. So it was founded in 734. It used to be much grander. See, a lot of the temples and shrines in Kamakura are very small, but at one point they were huge, like during the Kamakura period. And then they fell into disrepair and land got sold off and whatnot. So Sugimoto Dera is very small now. It has the most incredible staircase that goes up and covered in moss, and you can't walk on it. You get to walk around it. But just looking at it, you're like, oh, wow, this place is old. And you get to the top, and there's this little tiny hall, but you can go into it. So most of the temples, I mean, you can't go into the hall of worship, basically. But this you can go in, and there's like a little walking path to go around. You can see it's one of the most cluttered temples I've ever been to in my life. There's stuff everywhere. But all these little treasures you can see as you walk through. I mentioned that they're also stop number 1 on the Kanon pilgrimage. So they also have a lot of pilgrimage goods for sale as well. So you can get like, I think you can get like your white clothing and like your walking stick there. But yeah, it's very well known. Their big story is the Kannon. It's a wooden statue of Kannon. And there was a fire once, and miraculously, the Kannon saved herself. So when the priests got there, they're like, oh no, the Kannon's on fire. They found the Kannon out under a cedar tree. So that's kind of like the claim to fame there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the mossy steps because there's no handrail and they look so slippery. And I was like, surely nobody is walking up there.
No, nobody's allowed on those steps. So there's steps on either side.
It's very beautiful, but I can't imagine walking up.
Oh no, tears would fall, killing the moss.
Yeah,
it's been there a long time.
You've got so many beautiful photos and some great video from Jomyoji.
Jomyoji. Mm-hmm.
Jomyoji.
So it's just down the road from Sugimoto. Okay. So it's the one with they've got Japanese
tea. Oh, with the tea house, yeah.
And the English style, yeah.
Okay. Komyoji.
Komyoji,
we haven't talked about yet.
Sure. Komyoji is, it's about a 25-minute walk from the station, I think. So it's not crowded usually because it takes a lot longer to get there. And it's not in like, there's not like a bunch of other major temples in the same area. There's some smaller temples, but there's nothing really drawing people there, which is a shame. You can also go inside its hall of worship. It's got these massive gates. And so you go through there and then great big open area. Unfortunately, right now they're in the middle of construction, so you can't go in, but usually you can go in, and it's one of those temples where like everything is shiny and gold, and there's stuff hanging from the ceilings, and it's a beautiful spot, and it's very quiet, and you can go in and just like sit and pray. And there's often they have like seminars, I guess, or special events, so you often hear the monks chanting as well. So that's always really special to be able to hear that and just sit in silence and enjoy it. They also have a one of the great gravel gardens. It is also under construction at the moment, but it's also on several of the pilgrimages. I think the Kannon as well as the Jizo Sama. So it's one that it's Maine, even if it's off the beaten track. It's an important temple in town, and it's definitely worth a visit. It's absolutely gorgeous, and you can see the roof from like all over town. It's like green rectangle, and you're like, what's that? Oh, that's Komyoji. So
beautiful. You've been to so many and covered so many of the beautiful temples. Do you have a favorite walk or a favorite temple, or you like them all?
It's really hard to choose. Sugimoto is one of our very favorites. And I love Hasedera. I mean, it's so popular, and it's a little bit overwhelming during non-COVID times. There's so many people there, and it's an obvious answer, but it is incredible. There's a reason why it's so popular. Just amazing. Gosh, and then for shrines, I've loved Sasuke Inari. I love Kita Kamakura. A lot of people skip Kita Kamakura. Don't. It's incredible. Engakuji, which is right at the station, is huge, and it's one of the main. So Kamakura has like a 5 temple system, like a lot of places in Japan, like the 5 yama. Engakuji is one of them. I think it's number 2. Jomyoji is one of them as well. And so is Jochiji, which is also by Kita Kamakura Station. It's stunning as well. And then there's Megetsuin right by Kita Kamakura. It's famous for its blue hydrangeas. And Tokeiji, which is very near the station as well. And it is also known as the divorce temple. It was one of the only places where women could get a divorce in Japan in the past. So it used to be a convent. And women would go and they would work for a few years, and when they finished their period of work, they were divorced basically. So it's just had this incredible history, and it's just beautiful. It's also one of the Kannon temples, very green, like just Kita Kamakura, don't skip it. And between Kamakura and Kita Kamakura is Kenchoji, which is the number 1 temple in town, the first mountain temple, and it's enormous. Like for Kamakura, it's huge grounds, and stunning. When you're inside the buildings, look at the ceilings because they're all amazing. There's like dragons or like bright colors. Beautiful in the spring for Sakura season. And at the very back, there's a really neat shrine with like these weird tengu, and not like the normal tengu with the long nose, but the older one with like the crow nose or the bird nose, like all up the hillside. So it's incredible. And from there, you can actually join one of the best hiking trails in town. So Kenchoji is also up there on my list. but there's just too many.
It's wonderful. I visited Kamakura so many times, and still looking at your Instagram, looking at your photos, your blog, your videos, I'm like, oh, I want to go there next time, or I wonder where that is. So it's so wonderful to have an area of Japan that has retained its traditional brand. And one of the things I love about Kamakura, or Kita Kamakura as well, is they must have some rules in place where they do not build big, tall buildings, right?
They do. I've definitely heard whisperings of that. I don't know the specifics, but yeah, you'll notice Kamakura is a very low town. So even the downtown area, I think the tallest building is the Tokyo building, and it's maybe 7 floors. Like 6 is as high as you can go, and I think there's one above. But I don't think there's anything much higher than that.
No, and you can really look across the town. If you're up high in a mountain, you can really look across Kamakura and see the big Buddhas in the mountains, or in Ofuna they have the white camel, right?
Yeah.
So that would not be possible if it's a normal town or city build, because they would have a high-rise mansion or something. So I'm so grateful to the town planners who are obviously making a rule and keeping that low build system. And it really always reminds me that we need sustainability on all levels. We need it coming from planning as well as from the ground up with businesses, right? Yeah. I love that. And you chose to be right there on the coast. Right there next to the water. And so many of your beautiful photos are of the sea, of the waves and the sea. So it's pretty choppy and different every day, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we're not known for having rough seas. I mean, people surf here, but the waves are like this generally. But every once in a while, and especially in the winter is definitely the best surfing season. The waves do get quite big, and a couple times in the summer they do too. Yeah, every day is different. And I grew up in the middle of Canada. Like, I'm not used to the ocean. So for me, it's a little bit terrifying, but it's beautiful to look at.
How do your kids like it, being right there next to the sea? Do they go surfing with dad, or?
They do. The older one now, she does a bit of surfing. I think she prefers bodyboarding, but yeah, they do that in the summer. The younger one has no fear, so she's definitely on the surfboard, which is terrifying for me. But I think she's going to be the surfer out of the two. If one of them goes towards surfing, it's going to be her. It makes me nervous to think about my kids as they get older, and the stupid things I did as a kid at the river in my town. And I think, oh God, they've got an ocean. It's even worse. How am I going to get through this? Yeah. But the kids seem to be good, but they enjoy it. They like being able to take their friends to the beach. And
nice. Yeah. And then on your YouTube channel, the top banner, you've got somebody standing up and paddling. SUP. Yeah. Do you ever do that? That's a wonderful sport.
Yeah, when we first moved here, I bought myself a stand-up paddleboard. I have not done it in several years, but my husband does it, so he enjoys it. He also windsurfs, so he kind of looks at the ocean. He's like, "Well, I can't windsurf today, and I can't surf today. Maybe I'll take the paddleboard out." Yeah,
it's a nice option. It's really good workout, and we've talked about it a few times. We have it in Hiroshima on the rivers. And as I get older, my balance is not as good as it was. So for me, it's kneel up and paddle or sit up and paddle. I don't stand anymore, but it's still perfectly fine to do that. And it's still a really good workout. I love doing it.
Yeah. It's nice to just kind of lie back and just float, you know. It's a wonderful sport.
That's great. Let's get back to the business of running a B&B a little bit. How much time management do you have to devote to keeping up with all the emails, or from a business standpoint? I think there's a lot of people who might be interested in running their own B&B type business.
Yeah, we use booking.com, So we don't have to worry too much about emails. For the most part, we're not allowed, through our contract with Booking.com, we are not allowed to offer our property for lower prices than what they find on Booking.com. So it doesn't really do anything different to book directly with us. So we basically say on our website, if you want to book, go through Booking.com. So I think that saves a lot of email time. And Booking.com, their system is very, very good. So it's just, you don't have to spend too much time doing it. Because we're only doing 2 rooms these days, there's not even all that much time. It takes 3 or 4 hours to kind of like do a thorough clean in the mornings. And then after that, it's just a lot of the job is waiting. You're always waiting. So even though you can kind of do your thing, you're still working because you're still waiting and you don't know what you can do. Like, can I work out right now? And then 10 minutes into a workout, your guests show up and you're like, hi, and you're like dripping sweat. So a lot of it is waiting. That's a lot of your work. But otherwise, with just 2 rooms, it's not that time consuming. If we had, even with 3 rooms though, it adds, another hour basically to make sure that everything's fine. So time wise, when I think about it now, I'm like, oh, it doesn't take much. When we're doing it, I'm like, oh, it takes so much time. But yeah, the admin doesn't really take too much. My husband does all of the big admin stuff, all of the taxes, and that's hard. That is time consuming because everything, especially because when we serve food, the bills have to be very, very carefully organized and put through for tax purposes, and that takes a lot of time. You also have to think about the health department visits and the fire department visits and the police visits. So those aren't very regular, but you do have to kind of schedule them in like once a year sort of thing. And it kind of pops up. The police will be like, hi, we're in the neighborhood. Can we come by? And you're like, okay. So there's the unexpected time things as well. And how much time you're spending with guests is so dependent on the guests. Some are very, I'll say high maintenance, not in a bad way, but you spend hours with them. And others are very, they're like, no, we know what we're doing. Hi, bye, out the door they go. So it's kind of hard to get like a general, you can't really generalize how long it's going to take, I guess. But admin isn't a big one. The day-to-day admin isn't like a huge time sucker.
And then what did you find your ratio of international guests versus Japanese guests?
Gosh, what we looked at that last year and now I've totally forgotten. I think we might actually be like 80% international guests. I wouldn't be surprised. In our first year, we used Rakuten. And when we were doing Rakuten, we had a lot of guests from Japan, and we were mostly Japanese guests, and with like a very small number of foreign guests. And we switched over to Booking.com. And then, of course, it just like flipped. The majority of our guests are from China. So they love Kamakura because they grew up watching a cartoon called Slam Dunk. So they come to Kamakura to go to the train station, Kamakura Kokomai, to get a picture by the, what is this thing called? I can't remember in either language, the train thing. So that's why we have so many guests from China. And that's, yeah. But yeah, definitely about 80% maybe international.
So then during coronavirus, you've had a huge drop off because 80% of your customers are not coming, right?
Exactly. So especially in the winter, we rely on guests from China for the Chinese New Year. So right from the start, when Wuhan and then China started having trouble with coronavirus, we very quickly started seeing, oh, we're not getting any reservations, because usually they reserve in like January and they come in late January, February. We weren't getting any of those reservations. We had a few cancellations where they said, we're really sorry, but we don't want to stress you out. So our last guests from China were January 21st last year. And then our last guest who flew in to Japan from abroad would have been mid-February. We had like Russians, Europeans, and Taiwanese. And after that, anybody who's come, they've been based in Japan, majority Japanese.
And then how does that work with international customers? Like, are you using Booking.com? They're using it in Chinese? You're communicating in English?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's sometimes I get really confused because I write or I upload everything in English, and then Booking.com translates it into whatever languages are getting interest. So they're not necessarily translating it into every language. when I have an amendment to make, I'll be like, can you change this? Can you please make sure it's changed on the Chinese page? And because they won't necessarily change it on all the pages at once, from what I understand. Sort of different people say different things, because I don't know whether it's different depending on where you are. But that has always really worried me, because sometimes people come, they're like, oh, dinner's not included. And we're like, no. And you're like, oh my gosh, what does it say on the page in your language? And you kind of start to panic, because I can't read it. I can't double check.
And would Booking.com help you if it was something that was kind of on their side of the missing information?
They've been very good, very, very good. So you can just call them up, and the only problem is you don't know who you're going to talk to. You don't know where they are in the world. It's not necessarily you're going to get. You might not get somebody based in Japan, so they might not really understand what you're talking about. So they're seeing your page for the first time too, basically. But they work really hard. So I have very few complaints when it comes to Booking.com. I found them very supportive, and they've also said, in the case of a guest kind of making trouble for you, we've got your back if it is something that a policy you've clearly written on your page and they're not following. You can kind of count on us, basically. So it's been really helpful, because if we were just in this on our own, we wouldn't have any of that support at all. And it would, us against a guest, and guests are king. So
we have a comment from Sarah Hodge joining from Facebook. She says, good evening from Texas. Thank you for joining. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was about just choosing one kind of platform. So you're just choosing Booking.com. You're not on Airbnb and Booking.com and Rakuten. Was that kind of strategic, or just how it happened?
Because we have so few rooms, we are terrified of double bookings. There are programs that will kind of work with several booking companies to update your rooms. Our understanding is that it's not immediate. There is a lag. We're not so popular that lag is going to cause a problem. But the fear that both my husband and I have is that the 1 in a million chance will occur, and two people will book the same room at the same time or within 5 minutes on two different platforms, and then we'll have a double booking. That is absolutely terrifying for us, because then you have to find other accommodation that is either at your level or better for them. And to do that in Kamakura, we would have to go better. There's like nothing like us. So we'd have to pay way too much money, more money than we have, to set somebody up in a better, like a nicer hotel. So we did do Rakuten and Booking. We did one room in each. So we've kind of done a few different, and we were asked to do Expedia as well. So we did Expedia for a little while. We only did 2 guests with them, and then I was just like, I can't handle the fear. We were doing like one room with each again. And with Booking.com and Agoda have some form of relationship. So you can book Agoda, and it goes through Booking.com. So we're kind of out there on those 2 sites, although it's a little bit complicated and it does cause problems on occasion. But it was just our feeling like, I can't deal with that. I just can't deal with the stress.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And one of the things, I was consulting with a small guest house, this is before coronavirus, and she wasn't getting any bookings, and she was only on a Japanese one. And she wanted international visitors, and I suggested Booking.com. Of course, and then she had a lot more visitors. Of course, you have to pay commission. There are charges along the way.
So yeah, Booking.com has a higher commission than Rakuten does. And it's kind of ouchy. But the simplicity for us, I mean, you really have to look at your own situation. Like for us, because I've got, the kids, I've got writing, we've got a lot of things going on, and I'm just not interested in spending the amount of time on marketing that I would need to do if we went alone. So we're just said, you know what, we'll pay the commission, even though it's kind of pricey, and we'll just deal with it, But you really need to think about that. Rakuten is a lower commission fee. I don't remember where Expedia fell. It might have been about the same as Booking, but they're all a little bit different, and depending on the services. So with Expedia, we did payment through Expedia, so we didn't have to deal with cash. So everything went through Expedia credit cards, so the commission was higher. With Booking.com, we take care of payment, so the commission is a little bit lower. So you really need to think. If we could, we would just have Booking take care of payment, because it would simplify life so much. And if people canceled or didn't show up, we would still get paid, whereas we don't right now. So you really have to look at all the little details and say, okay, is it worth it? And for us, for the Booking.com, yeah, it's worth it.
Have you found any way to collaborate with other local businesses, or like the tourism office? Will the tourism office recommend you guys? Like, how does that work in your local area of Kamakura?
We are members of the local Ryokan Association. So we pay like a yearly fee, and they kind of offer support if we need it. And they also include us in their listing. So they've got like a web page. I can't even remember what it is off the top of my head. It's been so long. And a few other places, I think our name shows up with like a link to our website. Also, the nice thing about that is it kind of gives you legitimacy, I guess, especially when Minpaku was still like a really, really big gray area. A lot of people thought we were Minpaku, and we weren't. But just having that connection, because they actually, Kamakura, Ryokan Kyokai or whatever it is. And it kind of gave us a little bit of legitimacy. But the big thing is, when you run a place like this, the health department comes and does a check every year. If you're part of the association, the health department only comes every 2 years. The in-between year, it's the head of the association and somebody else that's way up there in the association. They come and check you out. They're looking for the exact same things, but the amount of pressure you feel is completely different. So that's kind of my favorite part of that particular relationship. With local businesses, I've thought about it, and I've had a friend kind of be like, oh, I know someone in Kamakura who would be interested, but it was right before the pandemic, and so nothing really came of it. And just thinking like how that would work, and would we be able to, make it work, and, could we do that with Booking.com? You have to come up with different plans, and it's something that I would definitely consider, but maybe when the kids are bigger and I have a little more independence. But it would be a lot of fun to be able to do, there's like all sorts of great taiken in town. So I would love to do something like that eventually.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights. I just have one last question, even though we just squeaked over an hour. How do you envision going forward this year? It looks like this is going to be another challenging year. Not much tourism. Are you looking for ways to reach out to more domestic travelers, or just kind of stay low key, do some maintenance, have some me time?
I think we'll probably go there, just because I am concerned about my husband's blood pressure, and because we have kids, I think we'll just go the low key route. And then probably we won't go back to serving breakfast, just to keep that. It's unfortunate because we don't get to talk to our guests as much, which is really sad for us and for a lot of the guests who are looking for that. But, safety comes first. And I think that's what we're going to be doing for the next year at least.
Yeah. Well, good luck. And I really hope you're able to find a way to just kind of continue during this really difficult time for any kind of accommodation. Mm-hmm. And I hope I can come visit you guys someday.
Yeah. We would love that. Yeah, definitely.
And do lots of temple walks together.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That would be great.
I would love that. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for watching and for your great comments and questions today. We do not have a talk tomorrow. We're starting back on Monday next week with Emma Dendler. She does a YouTube channel about veganism in Japan and eco-living. So please join us again next Monday. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Take care.